Hello and welcome. I'm Randy Bueller, joined this week by Dave Williams. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is pretty cool. I've wanted to do this for some time. I don't know why I didn't just ask, but it's exciting to be on this side of it now instead of just getting rolled on the other side.
Yeah, so we got about 10 minutes before the matches get started. So everybody in the chat, question, that'd be awesome. Hearing an audio. Somebody's got their audio.
On mine?
Yeah, you might have the stream open.
The stream is open. You did.
Okay, I think we're good now. Awesome. So first of all, introduce yourselves to the guys. I think most people know who you are, but you may as well sort of give people the rundown, how you spend your time when you're not crushing in vintage.
Yeah, I'm David Williams, currently a professional poker player, but I started playing poker through Magic, the Gathering. That is my love and what I would do with all my spare time if I didn't have to pay bills. Magic is the best game ever. I always say that. Even at tournaments when I'm playing poker, they ask, and I say I'd rather be playing Magic. I should get a bumper sticker on my car. I'd rather be playing Magic. But I've had a love for vintage for many years now. Luis has a funny story, a little quick anecdote. One of my first interactions was when I really fell in love with vintage in about 2007, somewhere between then and 2009. I saw that they were having a cool series in the Bay Area at like his local store. I think it's like Eudaimonia or whatever it's called. And I just decided, you know what? It was on a Sunday. I bought a Southwest ticket at like 8 in the morning, flew out to San Francisco or to the Bay Area from Vegas, landed, called him like, hey, when does this tournament start? He's like, noon. Why? I'm like, I just landed. I'm on my way. He's like, oh, what are you in town for? I'm like, to play vintage. Why else? Played the tournament, and as soon as it was over, I flew back home that night. So I just spent like a few $200 on a Southwest ticket just to fly out and play a vintage tournament, which was pretty fun. I really just enjoy it. It's to me, it seems like the purest form of Magic now left, because when you play other formats, they seem to get solved pretty quickly, or they just get stale to me. I don't know, they get boring. Whereas vintage, the card pool is so vast that you can do so many different things that even though there's your standard decks, there's dredge, stacks, blue decks, there's still so many intricacies between the decks that you can do a lot of different things and like metagame and come up with like a few card changes that make it really interesting to me. So I really enjoy vintage, and it's the only constructed format I really like to play anymore.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, it seems like Magic has this role in the poker community where, I mean, you're not the only one who sort of plays Magic in your off time, right? I mean, it feels like there's a lot of guys who are like, okay, fine, maybe I can make more money playing poker, but Magic's the game that's more fun. Is that fair?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we have a really big kind of community within the poker group that plays Magic. It's a lot harder now because they've started making the tournaments have better side events so people aren't free. But in the old days, there would be nothing to do. We'd be like in a random country. I can remember we were in Monte Carlo. Everyone was out of the main event. And there was like me, Scott Seaver, Justin Bonomo, Isaac Hatchton, Noah Boken, Eric Froehlich, Adam Ruthless Levy, and a bunch of other guys I'm sure I'm forgetting. And I don't want to offend any of them if they see this. But there was like 12 of us, and we were cubing all day in a conference room, just cube. So yeah, I mean, cube is the format we like the most because it's a lot easier. We're not going to play constructed because none of them have decks. It's the easiest limited format. At the time, it wasn't even on Magic Online, so it gave us a chance to do degenerate things that we didn't ever get to do. So, they don't really like the competitive formats as much in that group because then the divide between the ones that play on the Pro Tour, like Eric and myself, versus the ones that don't play is more magnified. You can see it when it's, like, say we're Theros drafting. It's something that me and Eric have done numerous times, and they've never done it. They don't really stand as much a chance, whereas when we're cubing, we've all done it. We don't do it without them, so it's kind of everybody gets the same amount of practice. There's Black Lotus, so even if a guy's not as good, he can first turn play Jace. There's variance is enough to where it's actually fun and keeps it on an equaler footing. We still have a little bit better results, but it makes it a little more fair than if we were just doing like core set draft or something that we've practiced a ton and they haven't played. But yeah, we have a pretty big community in the poker group that like in the summer for the World Series and everybody's in Vegas, we used to have a thing that we didn't do this year because everybody was busy called the World Series of Draft. And one time I think we had enough for 4 draft pods. I think we had like 32 players.
Wow.
In a conference room, just drafting all day, and it's the best.
I was talking to Marshall Sutcliffe at an event recently, and he said, I guess he hung out with you guys a little bit this last summer. And he said, yeah, Marshall's telling me, I met this guy named some like big Viking guy, Sigurd something. Like, yeah, Sigurd Eskelund, of course.
Pro Tour champion, bracelet winner, great guy. I think he's a teacher also. I mean, he's just an amazing person.
Oh, yeah, he's awesome. He's also the only guy I ever got a warning for. I got a warning for yelling at him in the middle of a Rochester draft.
I was there.
That was a funny story. Anyway, he was like, Sigurd clearly got the fever back. Marshall was like talking to him, and you could tell Sigurd started getting wanted to play more Magic all of a sudden.
Well, this summer especially, Vintage Masters was huge for Sigurd and Brian Hacker, who are two friends of mine that played on the Pro Tour years ago. They both play poker heavily, but they're not really into Magic as much. So Brian spent a lot of time out here with me, and he was watching me play Vintage Masters online, and he loved it. And I think he might play more Vintage Masters than I do now. I mean, I literally log on to Moto or Magic Online, and I see him logged in drafting Vintage Masters, or I'll get a text message, hey, check out this deck. And then Sigurd saw us tweeting about it. He checked it out, loved it. Worth, I think, sent him a free draft set, and it was like giving him a little taste of what's available.
Yeah, first one's free, right?
Too. So Vintage Masters was huge for bringing people back. And I will say last summer when Modern Masters came out, it did the same thing. I mean, that was one where we had multiple tables of people drafting and a lot of older guys that don't play much anymore. Chris Benefell, I think Casey McCarroll came out. I mean, we had guys that don't really play much. They saw Modern Masters. They're like, hey, I'm coming to draft. So Wizards is hitting it out of the park with these releases because it's really good at bringing back old players. And the nostalgia factor is amazing. I mean, that's one of my favorite things about Magic, which is why I love Time Spiral Block, is all the throwbacks to like my childhood. It just made me feel really good.
Yeah, Vintage Masters was fun for me because I'm like, these are cards from the 90s. I was good in the 90s. This is awesome. I know how to play these cards.
Totally.
So who brought the cube to Monte Carlo? I skipped over that part of the story, but
I'm the one. Actually, I just got rid of my cube. Actually, rest in peace to my cube. But I was the kind of keeper of the cube. I built a cube years ago. I think actually 2007 when I moved into my condo, and I would always travel with it and bring it around to the tournaments for all the guys. But it was just so valuable, and it was so hard to carry and so big.
Do I have a uniform, Daddy?
That's Liliana. Sorry. So we are live right now.
Your kid is named Liliana, right?
Yes. So, yeah, I had to kind of trick my wife to get this name. I didn't really trick her. I mean, we went back and forth for a long time on what names we were going to choose for our daughter, and we both didn't like the same names. Like, I would like a name, she wouldn't. It was almost like if one of us liked the name, the other would be like, no, I don't like that name. Like, we could never concede a name. And then I think she presented a list, and I noticed Liliana was on it, but it was spelled differently. And I couldn't be too enthusiastic. I couldn't just be like, yes, I want that name. Because a week later, she'd be like, no, I don't like that name. So I'm like, let me think about this list. I'm like, this one could be okay. I want to spell it a little differently, get it spelled correctly. And then she finally was like, please, can we have it? And I was like, all right, I guess. So then I think
you got her to ask for Liliana?
Yeah, so Worst's wife is a friend of mine, and I think she said something to her about, your child's named after a Magic card here. I'll let you say hi to everyone. Say hi. So this way. So Worst's wife told her, and she's like, our daughter's named after a Magic card? I'm like, yeah, but it's a really good Magic card. So, but, I mean, it's a beautiful name, and she picked it anyways, and it was on her list. So it just happened to kind of work out.
Perfect. Nice to see you. All right. Sounds like we've got a game ready.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one because it's the best man for my wedding, my best friend. We live together, Eric Froehlich, and we're playing the same deck list. And then he's playing against my sort of Magic grandfather in a weird sense, Chris Pikula.
Okay.
The guy who taught me like competitive Magic, like I was playing for fun, is a guy named Jason Page in Dallas. And this is like 1997. And he was like my best friend at the time. And he says, yeah, I got this guy named Chris Pikula, who I know from like Indiana, who taught me how to play. And I'm like, I've heard of him. He did well on a Pro Tour here or something. I think it was right after the Pro Tour. Nice. So in a way, Chris is like my Magic granddaddy.
Very nice. What do you think of this matchup, though? Mono Blue Control versus the Shops deck. You've got to play against Bob, right, with a similar but
yeah, I'm playing against a different Shops list. I was talking to Eric about it. On paper, it seems like it should be a buy. It just seems like it should just be really easy because you have basic lands. The wastelands don't get you. You have an incredible sideboard with energy flux and back to basics against them. But playing the matchup, it never works out that way really against Stacks, and that's why I think Stacks has been such a major player in the vintage metagame for so long, because first of all, if you go first and you play some lock pieces, some spheres, your other opponent doesn't even get to play the game really. So it's really, not as easy as it seems. The die roll is important, and then the draws are huge. I mean, Eric is going to, no offense to Chris, probably play better, because Eric just plays a lot more and has a lot of more experience.
He is currently leading the Player of the Year race, right? I mean, the season's only a little bit in. We haven't had a Pro Tour yet, but he's got 2 Grand Prix top 8s in a season that's like a month old.
Eric,
one of the best players in the game right now.
Eric's the best player in the game right now, or top 5, I'd say, in the game right now. So he's got that on his side. But look, Chris won the die roll.
Yeah, the die roll was huge. I was looking at this hand. Chris has a workshop and a sphere and a chalice, and Eric is sitting with a mana crypt, potentially into a turn 2 Jace, but now he's got real issues.
Right, yeah. Chris, had Eric won the die roll here, he could have played that mana crypt, beat the chalice, beat the sphere, and then the mana crypt would supply him with the mana to also cast through the sphere. So he could next turn play an island and have, mana drain up or time walk or Jace.
Right.
But by going second, which is what this matchup's ultimately about a lot of the times, now Eric's pretty much locked out, and this is going to be a tough one. I guess Chris could not have played his Lodestone Golem, so never mind. So
so the sphere is hurting him too. But what's he going to name with Revoker here? I wonder.
So it's usually there's two choices: Jace or Black Lotus. Since he has a chalice on 0, he can't cast Black Lotus. It's got to be Jace because those are the only permanents I think you can really activate, or Sensei's top. But
yeah, and he named Jace.
Right, Jace is ultimately the best card that he could resolve to get out of this situation because then he can bounce Lodestone Golems and cast. So Jace is the pick here, especially with a chalice on 0, so that he can no longer, you don't have to worry about Black Lotus or Moxes.
Wow.
Yeah, this game is going to be really tough for Eric to get out of. I mean, you can never count him out, really, because, he's going to give it his best effort and do what he can.
You guys don't have main deck Hercules, do you? This is the kind of game where Hercules Recall is about the only thing that can get you out. Yeah,
there is no main deck Hercules.
I mean, Chris gets to play a Lodestone Golem here. He can pay 5 for it. The Workshop, the Mishra, the Mutavault. The only good news for Eric here is that it's not going to last very long. There's a Lodestone here. There's another Lodestone waiting for next turn. He's never going to cast a spell, I don't think.
Right, yeah. His hand is a bunch of expensive spells and a chalice, and unfortunately, and a mana crypt, but the chalice is really shutting off his ability to get out of the sphere. And, now the mana drain's a little too late, but it's going to cost 4, actually, with the addition of the Lodestone.
Yeah.
So Eric really is not going to – this match is probably going to end before Eric gets to successfully resolve a spell. He might get to Spell Snare something here, but there's nothing like this other Revoker, but that's not going to really affect the game.
Right. Crunch, take 7.
Someone in the chat, Marin Thidus, basically said the die roll was huge. I mean, if Eric goes first this game, I think it's a blowout the other way. Eric gets to go land, mana crypt, and then he can spell snare if he needs to the sphere.
The sphere, yeah.
Then he can untap and play another land and have mana drain up. The chalice does nothing at that point. I mean, literally the game is
time walk that's turned on. He's got a Jace that's turned on. This was
right. He gets the next turn. He could actually first turn time walk and then first turn Jace. He can go island, mana crypt, time walk, land, Jace, go.
Yep. And Eric packs him in when he sees the second Lodestone. That game was brutal. Definitely a die roll game. We can look at the deck lists. Hopefully we can see. You guys have a sideboard plan, right? I say you guys because you're playing the same deck as Eric.
Yeah. So I have the deck. I have it open here. I can even talk about it. Let's see here. Yeah, so Chris doesn't have much of a sideboard. Okay, let's look
at Eric first. You guys have 3 Energy Flux. Seems like the huge one, right?
So yeah, Energy Flux, which is really huge. So I was testing against Bob's matchup, and Bob has Metalworker, which is actually amazing against Energy Flux because you can make 12 mana and just pay your upkeeps. Chris doesn't have that ability, and you actually can't use Mishra's Workshop to pay for Energy Flux either. So you don't have much mana to really pay for Energy Flux in Chris's deck. So Energy Flux is incredible. It's coming in. Dismember is coming in because it's just great against Revokers, all the threats pretty much. It also beats Lodestone or the Juggernaut.
Lodestone Golem.
Darksteel Juggernaut. But Lodestone Golem.
Sure.
Indestructible Darksteel Juggernaut. Hercules Recall is great, obviously, for good reasons. We were actually talking about propaganda because once you have Energy Flux and Back to the Basics, which you're going to see a little lower going, then it's really hard if they do resolve a threat. They can't even get that threat through because you don't have any mana to pay for propaganda. So propaganda could theoretically come in. Steel Sabotage is great. Yep. Sower probably not because he has Phyrexia Metamorph, so he can just Metamorph and Sower right back.
Do you have enough to take out?
Yeah, I mean, Mental Misstep is terrible. Repeal is terrible, so there's 5 right there.
Okay.
Grafdigger's Cage doesn't really serve a purpose in this match. I need it against Forge Masters in mine, so you can take out that. You can even take out a threat, such as a Consecrated Sphinx or a Jace, because if you're able to resolve those spells, then you're probably doing okay. So you don't need all your threat. Misdirection and Mindbreak Trap are both pretty much useless. So you've got quite a few cards that can come out.
All right, well, let's go look at Chris's deck list while we're here.
Chris actually doesn't have many options to sideboard, which is, like against Merfolk.
But his main deck is fine. I mean, you saw there. That's the plan.
The main deck
plan A is pretty good if he gets to implement it.
Like, you don't need Ghost Quarter. Tabernacle doesn't do anything. Against Merfolk, it would have been great, but now we've switched. Cage does nothing. you theoretically could bring a Null Rod to kind of constrain Ephro's mana, but it could also affect you the same. And with like Back to Basics and Energy Flux, you could end up in a spot where you can't cast. So I doubt he wants Null Rod. Crucible, we don't have Wasteland, so that doesn't really help you at all. Sculpting Steel, maybe if he wants another threat. Like, let's say he has a bad card in his main. But don't really see Batter Skull helping. It's too expensive, or the Juggernaut. So Chris doesn't have much to bring in, but his main deck is pretty good already.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It doesn't, not like he needs to take anything out. So.
Right.
Those guys ready yet, or? Awesome. Sounds like we're just about ready for game number 2. Chris took a brutally fast game 1. Winning the die roll, definitely huge.
Yeah, because even if Eric wins this, he's unfortunately going to have to go second in game 3. So he's really going to have to hope for a Force of Will in his opening hand, or Chris to not have such an explosive draw that can lock him out so that he can actually interact and have a shot. So
yeah, I'm not positive Eric would have won that game on the play, but he only had a chance on the play. Now he's playing first with Black Lotus into Soul Ring and Jace.
He doesn't have an island, but being able to play, Strip Mine, which is great for the workshop coming out, into Soul Ring, into Lotus, into Jace. Then you can draw 3 cards, see what, you actually, I think the play is to not play the Strip Mine. It's to play Black Lotus, Soul Ring, Jace, and draw 3, hopefully hitting an island, so then you can have Steel Sabotage up.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that is the play. What does Chris have? He's got a Thorn. He does not have a... Oh, he's got a Workshop with a Thorn and a Chalice.
So, see, this is the thing I found when I was practicing with Chris's deck. His hand is okay, but it doesn't really have any threats other than some man lands. But it doesn't have anything that really does anything. So, being on the draw here, his Thorn's not going to do much. His Chalice is not going to do much. So, he's really got a handful of just mana and man lands, which the man lands are going to be good against Jace. But, Ephro has a Strip Mine and a Dismember. And he didn't find an island, but he did find a Sapphire.
That's good enough.
He gets to play a land and a Mox and have Force of Will and still Sabotage up. This hand is actually incredible, and this is a blowout way, all because of who went first.
Wow.
Because if it went the other way,
Chris Chalice would have come down again. No Lotus, no Sapphire. Soul Ring, turn 1 would have been Strip Mine for Soul Ring. Still no blue mana. Jace would have been a million years away. Crazy.
Right, so now we get to see the other side of this coin. So let's see what he's got. Ancient Tomb.
Chris plays the Ancient Tomb instead of the Workshop because he can see the Strip Mine on the other side of the table. So
yeah, and he's going to Chalice for 1, so there's no reason to put out your more valuable land. Even if you didn't see the Strip Mine, you're going to have a mana floating, so you might as well play your Ancient Tomb here in case he has a Strip Mine. But yeah, so Eric has to steal Sabotage because if you don't, you can't cast it anyways. So
makes sense.
You might as well.
Do you strip Ancient Tomb?
I think you do.
Maybe depends what you hit here.
Yeah, I mean, I really...
Jesus.
So now he's going to have Mana Drain up, and he has Hurkyl's Recall, Force of Will. I think you definitely strip the Ancient Tomb.
Can we just go to game 3?
Yeah, I mean...
It may take a little longer than the first one, but it is about as lopsided. Wow.
So Eric's opting not to strip, I guess because he wants to wait for a Workshop since he's got so many counters. He's not in any real hurry. Sure. I personally would have stripped, but Eric also, something I learned, a mistake I made, he likes to let the Ancient Tomb do damage to the opposing player, even though he's not a Merfolk deck like I was. So maybe he just wants to save the strip for a Manland or a Workshop and let Chris just keep taking 2 damage to cast all his spells.
He lets the Sphere resolve. He's like, I got plenty of mana. Who cares about the Sphere?
I think he's actually going to lock Chris out. Because I found a lot of the times when I was practicing with stacks, you end up constraining yourself if you don't have threats out with these Spheres. Right. If you don't have something beating him down, you get in a spot where you can't cast your spell. So Eric's got plenty of mana. Got a Jace working. He's got a Hurkyl's if he gets in trouble and needs to get out of this. So I think there's no reason to even counter that. You just sit back and fill your hand, find lands, and just keep playing lands and take Chris out.
What's he going to win the game with? You just eventually draw one of those Consecrated Sphinxes? Or...
Yeah, I mean, you just sit back and
a Lodestone Golem for Chris. Eric is just Mana Drain. He's got nothing to sink the Mana Drain mana into, I guess. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, he's drawing 2 cards a turn with the Jace, so whatever. He'll just counter anything threatening.
Yeah, I mean, he really does.
Just happy to let the game go for a while.
Only things he has to worry about are things that can kill him or Jace, which are Manlands, which he's got covered with a Strip Mine, and Lodestone Golem, which he can counter or bounce or dismember. So Eric's very patient. He's in no hurry, and he knows that, and he knows he can find pretty much whatever he needs. So he's just going to sit back. I think he's going to search for a back to basics and an energy flux to just lock the game up. Once he gets either of those two cards out, it's officially over.
Yeah, activate the Mutavault. He's got to try to pressure Jace. Force Eric to use his strip mine. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, so I think he can.
He's going to use Dismember instead.
Yeah, he wants to keep his mana. He wants to keep his strip mine in case he gets a workshop, or possibly in case he draws like another man land. And there's the back to basics. So this is going to shut off all future man lands.
They hit once.
Yeah, and basically all his workshops become just like single-use Black Lotuses, which are
at that point
bad,
start wastelanding his own lands, right? He needs to get a Crucible, and then he can like wasteland his own lands to get them back untapped. Super awkward.
Unfortunately, I don't think Eric's going to allow that to happen with a handful of promotion.
Yeah, no, that chalice would never resolve. But that's kind of his only play against back to basics. Crazy. All right.
So it doesn't. I mean, I don't think Chris is one to concede, even though we know the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, he knows that too. He knows he's under 10% to win, but he's not actual 0. So
I don't know.
It's a big match too, right? These guys are both 3-1. The winner's going to be hanging out in second place with a good position for a playoff run.
Possibly tied for first, depending on.
Oh yeah. Good point.
Yeah. Did you play Steve today? Or no, you played Josh. Who plays Steve today?
Steve plays Rich Shea.
Rich Shea. That's going to be an amazing match.
Yeah, I know. Friends and Rivals Week is how I build it on Twitter. Those guys have been bashing each other in Vintage for how many decades?
Two of the first guys I met when I went to my first Vintage Champs, like back when it was at like U.S. Nationals in like friggin' Indy or something one year.
Sure.
2007 or 8. I met both.
They
of them.
played for the title in 2007.
Then maybe I met them the next year because I was actually fans of them both just from reading on like the Mana Drain and forums, and it was weird. I'm like the fanboy, and I go up to both of them, and I'm like, "Hey guys," they were both so friendly to me, and I'll never forget that how friendly Rich was immediately, and how Steve was so willing to share information with a total stranger. I mean, Steve loves to talk and teach, but I basically went up to him and said, "Hey, I'm new to Vintage. I like it," and Steve was like, "Great, let's talk," and just wanted to talk Vintage and added me to forums, and he's been a great friend for Vintage, for helping with Vintage.
You going to get to Eternal Weekend this year?
It depends. It was looking like no, because I was going to go play the team GP, but my team can't get off work and can't afford it, and I can't really find a team I really want to play with because I want to play with a team where I feel I have a great shot to win. And since I don't get many weekends off, so since I'm not going to the GP the week after, I might go to Eternal Weekend the week before, which actually I think it's hard. Team limited versus Vintage. I mean, two of my favorite things, so it'd be tough.
Those are pretty good things. I guess it's a high-class problem to have if you only get to do one. I will be at both of those events.
Yeah, I miss the days of when I used to could just go to everything, but being a father now, it's just, you got to pick and choose.
Totally understand. All right, Sensei's dividing top because Eric needed more deck manipulation, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, this is sad every time. Look at Eric's hand. He has more counter spells than lands, and each of Chris's lands don't untap.
Once, ever.
Yeah, so,
kill a Jace?
And the thing is, I think Ephro might have a second Jace waiting on the top of his deck. Yeah, but they're both artifacts, Mistress Factory, so he can Hercules recall them if he wants.
Funny. I guess he has to if he wants to keep his Jace, but I don't think he's reshuffled. No, I guess he's got a fetch land. He may have shuffled away the second Jace.
Yeah, he might have.
Probably did. In fact. Yeah, looks like he's going to Hercules to Mistress.
Yeah, that's why it's better to save the Mishra. The Mutavaults aren't artifacts, so you can strip those and abuse the Mishras if you want with Steel Sabotage or Hercules.
Wow, Chris has to discard here. Yeah, he's seen enough. Like we're to the point of the game where I'm discarding none of my lands on tap. All right, on to game 3.
So basically, we had 2 games where whoever won the coin flip, basically, their opening hands were good enough, locked out the other guys. This hopefully we get a good interactive match here where they both actually get to do stuff. Although I'm a little biased because if that happens, it favors Ephro.
Yeah, I was going to say both players are hoping we don't get that. Both players would prefer.
Well,
just
Ephraim wouldn't mind that because that's good. That bodes well for the blue deck.
No, that's fair. But I mean,
The premise of the artifact deck is for your opponent to not play spells.
Yeah, you're right. So do you think, in general, for this matchup, I mean, if you played it 100 times, you both won the die roll 50 times, whose advantage do you think?
I think, well, post-sideboard, I think Eric is probably like a 65-35 favorite.
Okay.
Pre-sideboard, I think Chris might be, well, with that back, Chris might be about a 55-45 favorite. You know, not as big a favorite, but I think pre-sideboard Chris is a small favorite, assuming they both won the die roll 50, equal times, and they both played, their best and things like that.
Sure. In terms of this mono blue deck, you guys pretty happy with it? Sort of a week into having unveiled it?
Yeah, I mean, Eric is the metagame genius of our group. I mean, I was trying some stacks decks and we were talking, and he's like, "Hey, I think we saw the blue deck was kind of gaining a little popularity amongst vintage tournaments. I liked how we thought it would match up against what people were likely to play. Felt like it had game against the kind of decks that this group would play. We looked at who our opponents were and what we kind of figured they would play."
Did you have any other opponents in common than me, or because I know you both play me?
We both played you, and we just know you. We felt that you have to play some sort of island deck. We didn't think you'd be on Dredge. We didn't think you'd be on Shops. Either Oath combo or Control or some kind of blue deck.
Okay.
So we felt it had some game against that, and you're the only overlap. And then I felt like, let's see, who were my opponent last week was Luis, who I felt would be in the same boat playing some kind of blue deck. So I wanted to have a lot of counter spells. And then my other opponent is going to be today, Bob, who I also felt was in the same boat. So I felt like we could pigeonhole all three of my opponents in the same style of deck, and I felt it worked well against them. And then Ephro's opponents are, let's see, he plays Chris now, who we figured would be on the same deck.
Yeah.
Who did he play last week?
Me.
You. He played you, who we'd already discussed. And then next week, I believe, who does Ephro play next week?
Is it a mulligan for Chris? Now he's looking at a 6-card hand that has
a chalice.
A chalice?
Is that a Ghost Quarter?
I think so. It's like 2 Moxes, a Wasteland, a Ghost Quarter.
See, this hand is not very good.
I mean, it's all in on Chalice. Eric is also mulliganing. Now he's looking at a 6-card hand with a Library and a Mox and a couple of Force of Wills.
So it's pretty awkward because Library is not that great, especially when you mulligan. But in this matchup with all the Wastelands, and he's never going to he can't really play the Library and then say go and draw up. He's going to have to Force a Will or play his Mox. So the Library is basically a land that taps for color this year, and Chris has Wasteland. He's not going to Ghost Quarter, obviously, because we have plenty of islands in the deck list. So
it looks like they both kept the awkward 6s.
I think they have to keep these 6s, but I think it's going to have a really weird game.
Quite possible. Yeah, Chris dumps his Moxes and plays a Chalice 0, right? I mean, you got to play Chalice 0 on the play.
I think Chalice 1 might be more important in this matchup. It's really close. Why? Steel Sabotage is really good, and he's probably going to 0, and I'm just kind of looking at the other side of the coin. But besides the Moxes, which, he's going to play at a 0. I guess that's the only way Eric can really get anything going, but against the mulligan, I'm more likely wanting to hit the 1s than the 0s.
I feel like
you don't have any spheres anyway to shut them off of mana.
Yeah, but your chances of screwing them with Moxes are higher when they mulligan.
True, very true.
Wow, there's an energy flux. That is a million years away.
So
Eric chose not to Force a Will the Chalice.
Yeah, and he doesn't have anything other than that 1 Mox, but he's going to try to let his hand go up for his Library, so he's just going to wait and pass.
Cute.
Since Chris
he chose no land on turn 1. Interesting.
Right. Chris has no threats. Now, unfortunately, this is really bad. He doesn't know Chris has a Wasteland, so he's like, well, if I get Ghost Quartered here, I'll just get an island, but the Wasteland's really going to screw this plan up.
Oh, but he gets a card. He's got 7 cards. So, I mean, he's on the Library plan.
It's so small, I was counting 6. So, yeah, never mind. Erase everything I just said. Yeah, he can tap now and draw a card, so he can get his card. So, yeah, that's why he didn't care about the Chalice, because if he Force of Wills, then his hand is going to be 4. Then he draws up to 5. He's so far away from getting a card out of this.
Yeah. Well, Chris now has a second Chalice, and he's got to decide, do you Chalice 1? Do you Chalice 2?
So Chalice for 2 is pretty interesting because it could stop Purkle's recall and such, but then it shuts off all your spheres and your Revokers. So if he Chalices 2, he shuts off 12 of his own cards, depending on how many he left in the deck.
Can I play some cards? Which hand? Which ones are mine?
There's a bunch over there. Any cards you can find. My daughter wants to play Magic cards, and luckily we've got, as most gamers would know, you've got loose cards all over the house.
So he is going to Chalice for 2. Eric draws a card with the Library as a response, so he gets up to 8 cards. Now he could force a will and still stay on the library plan, hypothetically.
I don't actually think he really cares about Chalice for 2 because he can always steal Sabotage and
no, it's a 1. Sorry, there's 2 mana floating.
Right. If it were for 2.
He tapped 4 mana, but he left 2 of it floating. I missed that part.
Oh, the old tricky, like tap all your mana and then fireball and like, oh, I've got enough. No, I don't. That's different. This is not that. But if it was for 2, I think he would leave it because all that affects is Hercules and he can always just steal Sabotage later. But for 1, he might have to do it now. I mean, for the same reason in reverse, he might be able to just let that stay 2.
Wow.
But if it were for 2, you're happy because then Chris can't play his spheres or his Revokers, so you can let that sit for a while. And then if you need to get rid of it, you steal Sabotage and then Hercules later. With it being for 1, it's a tough choice. Yeah, he's going to go ahead and get rid of it because you really want to. Yeah, you want to use that Steel Sabotage. I mean, it can just get you out of a bad spot.
Yeah, and now here's the Wasteland on the library rather than the Ghost Quarter. So that's bad news for Eric.
Yeah,
he no longer has any mana.
He's probably
still got 2 Force of Wills though. I mean, he can buy himself a little bit of time with the 2 Force of Wills.
Well, yeah, unluckily for him, Chris has nothing. I mean, he has a workshop and another Mox.
Can't even play the Mox with the Chalice on 0.
Yeah, so Chris just really doesn't have anything, which is a problem I found with Terra Nova versus other versions, more threat-heavy versions, although a Juggernaut would be huge here.
I was going to say, that's why they played Darksteel Juggernaut. They just felt like, you know what, we might be a threat or 2 short. Let's play Darksteel Juggernaut. Wow, this sphere is huge because Chris has all the mana he'll need.
Yeah, but I mean,
he's just desperately trying to draw anything.
Yeah, but with all these
force of will here, right?
Definitely force of willing. I mean, because if not, you're 2 mana away from doing anything, and he really just wants to get up to enough mana to be able to cast his spells. He can Hercules, he can back to basics. He just wants to be able to do things. So you can't let that sphere resolve when you have no lands.
Remove the back to basics with that force of will. Still got a 3rd force of will in his hand.
So what did Eric?
He pitched this back to basics and then drew a 2nd one.
No, he drew the island. It was delayed. I didn't see his island. And I'm like, what did he draw here? So that island is huge because now he gets top out. So Chris has to find a threat quickly or Eric's going to eventually find lands and then be able to control the game.
Well, there's nothing to copy with that Metamorph.
And Liliana has found a D20. I love having that she loves Magic cards and dies. It's great because I want to teach her one day. I mean, pretty soon here. So yeah, he drew Metamorph, and there's nothing really interesting you want to copy. Maybe I would actually.
You could make a top.
Yeah, I would make a top maybe. I mean, you don't have any shuffle effects, so maybe not. Maybe it's better to have double a threat when you draw a threat, or double a sphere if you draw a sphere. But because if you make a top and you don't have any shuffle effects, you're actually not really going to get any more advantage after that. You're just going to be looking. Your 2 worst cards will be sitting on top of your deck.
Yeah, that sounds right. So force a will the sphere.
He has to again. Although something interesting, if you make a top, you can always put it on top of your deck later and then draw a Metamorph.
You draw it.
So
that's hilarious. I didn't even think
draw
of
a
that.
Metamorph. So that's kind of cool.
All right, Eric does force a will the top, so now he's discarded an energy flux.
He's really lucky that Chris hasn't drawn a manland.
Yes.
Because a manland would be applying a lot of pressure here, but luckily for him, Chris just has mana.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Eric debating if he can top in his upkeep. I mean, he doesn't get to keep open Dismember, which I guess he can't. Yeah, he can cast Dismember.
He wants to leave Steel Sabotage up, doesn't he?
Right, you want to leave Steel Sabotage up. So I don't know if I would necessarily might be topping into turn. I guess he figures he's going to find a land, so he can just
look so he flips to get the land.
Yeah, you got to get your land drops.
Yep, so Steel Sabotage is up.
And Dismember.
Reserve. Back to Basics is hanging out. Dismembers. Is Eric going to win this game from here?
I mean, it's a little too early to tell, but I don't think he's that big of an underdog anymore.
Chris's hand does nothing. Eric's hand has 5 relevant threats, 5 relevant cards anyway, and Chris's has like a half of a relevant card.
And now Eric has answers to the next 2 either Lodestones or Manlands with his Dismembers. He's got 2 different versions to bounce or counter. And then he's got Back to Basics where if he can get Chris to tap down and cast something, he could actually slam down Back to Basics, and then Chris is going to start constricting his mana for every spell he wants to cast. Although he has plenty, it's not really going to matter. It does take care of Manlands.
Chris is never actually going to successfully copy that top, by the way, because Eric would flip it to the top of his deck in response.
He might not. He might not want to waste a draw phase. He might not care if Chris gets a top, because all he really gets to do is look at 3 cards and then he doesn't have any shuffle. I mean,
it's
sounds
scarier
good
for Chris. It's not free. There's definitely risk involved.
Right, and it allows for Efro to have to do that. It tempos himself out. Like he has to now. He's drawing a top next turn, has to replay it. I don't think he actually would care if he was going to metamorph and copy a top.
Interesting. All right, what do you think of this Thorn?
You go ahead. You got to still sabotage it because you're still constricted on mana. You want to get back to basics out. You want to be able to cast your Dismembers, your Hercules. He's shown it's not like he's sandbagging threats. Chris would have played a threat, so there's no reason to hold on to still sabotage here. You could usually answer 1 for 1 everything he draws if you've got a top going and you've got that hand. So I don't think there's any reason to not counter that Thorn. So now we're going to upkeep since he can leave 1 open. So then he can do it again at the end of turn and see, 1 more card. All Eric really wants is land. So that means there's not 1 in the next 2 cards either. He would never have chosen Mana Drain.
Yeah.
So he needs another mana. So Chris draws dead again. He draws a blank. And now Eric's going to get to look again into turn. And once he finds a land here and gets Mana Drain up also, it's the longer this goes, the better it is for Eric. And the further away Chris gets to being able to win this game. I wish we could see his tops with him. I wish we had the top cam also.
We've just got the hand cams finally worked out smoothly. They seem to just work now.
And now I'm greedy and want the top of the deck cam. Yeah.
Do you also want the rabbit cam in poker?
No, they actually had that at this tournament I played this weekend. It was really kind of annoying. I was sitting next to the dealer, and after each hand, the dealer had to pull these cards aside and put them up to a special camera. And I'm like, why are they doing that? I mean, come on. All right, so Eric found a 3rd land. Chris drew another mana source. It's kind of funny with these 2 players. They both kind of moan and whine a lot. And no matter who won this game, there's going to be some whining. Whether it's going to be Chris whining about, I just drew all this mana, or Eric whining that he didn't draw any. There's going to be some whining. This is 2 of the biggest whiners. So I'm actually pretty excited.
Chris is the most entertaining whiner in the game, though.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I complain too. I mean, we all do it.
We all do. Chris is like the one guy where I'm happy to just listen to bad beat stories.
Oh, yeah. Well, his stories are epic. They're just some of the best ever. Man, this is really unfun. I mean, look how much. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 10,
Chris just draws 11,
12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, here we go. He's got 15 mana in play, 2 dead Moxes. He can Revoker this top, which is fine. If he's got Spell Snare in his hand, which is not going to have a lot more, I would probably just Spell Snare it, not because you care about the top, because you can always just kill it, but because it can attack you and it's a threat. And it's not like Spell Snare is going to get a lot more value. It can stop a Spear or a Thorn, but you've got mana now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the Revoker is about as more threatening than some of those cards.
Thorn, whatever, yeah. Because it can just attack you and kill,
Eric is going to win this game. I can't believe Eric's going to win this game.
Well,
he had no mana on turn, 5, 6?
The problem is, if your opponent, you have to sweep the leg in a sense. When your opponent has no land, you need to have a threat. And Chris drew really bad and has no threats.
What a crazy draw for Chris. Yeah, he's 20 cards into his library.
So Eric can actually let this resolve and then just dismember it if he wants.
Or he could Mana Drain so that he can drop back to basics without taking down Mana Drain.
But unfortunately, Chris is 4 mana, 4 artifact mana, so back to basics doesn't really even do anything.
Fair enough.
He'll probably play it anyways because he's going to have colorless mana floating, and it does make the man lands like shocks now. Mutavault is just shock instead of a creature.
Oh, but there was a Jace on top of his library. How about we play that, the Mana Drain mana?
Yeah.
And a Time Walk if he wants it.
This is a really unfortunate series of events for Chris.
Crazy.
That
I think he knows. He had Eric in pain. He just had to have a damage dealer of some kind. Like, he had him locked up for 5, 6, 7 turns.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, he has 8 man lands. He has 4 golems, just 12, probably 4 evokers afterwards, 16, and some Darksteel Juggernauts. So he's got almost 19, maybe 20 threats, a third of his deck, and he has not seen one. And then he happened to draw cards that he can't cast with his Chalice. He drew Moxes.
Right.
Metamorph, which does nothing when there's no threats out.
He drew the Caracas instead of a Manland.
Right. I mean, he just pretty much ran pretty bad in his draw phases.
Yeah.
Not that Ifro ran great. Ifro just had nothing, but it's kind of like when one guy's flooded and one guy's screwed. When the guy's screwed draws out of it, now they have all these things they can cast, and it's like you're just drawing one threat at a time. They have a handful of threats now that they, even though they're reactive threats, they're still threats. I mean, Eric's got a ton. Now, this is interesting because he can't play Black Lotus. I mean, I guess he could Hercules at the end of turn and untap and cast his Lotus, but yeah, Soul Ring. When he gets Soul Ring. I was forgetting about Soul Ring. I'm like, all he's got is Moxes, but he has also got Soul Ring left. So he's going to shuffle back in that Mana Crypt because that doesn't do anything with the Chalice out. Back to Basics is kind of useless here, but like I said, you probably want to keep it because it does make the Manlands not threats anymore.
The backup Jace seems more useless.
Yeah, the Jace is not going anywhere now that you've got a blocker and a Trinket Mage and Back to Basics.
Fetch land. Yeah, everything's coming up Ifro.
Yeah, I wish I could go upstairs and see the smile on his face right now. I know he's got a nice smile, and when Ifro smiles, it's beautiful. So I'm sure he's pretty happy. Oh, here comes the Juggernaut, but unfortunately, it's a little too late. He can still sabotage it. He can bounce it back. How many artifacts? Right, it'll be a 5/5 anyway, so he could theoretically, I guess he could dismember it and bounce other stuff. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's not that important.
Just a question of which way he wants to deal with the Darksteel Juggernaut.
Yeah, he could Hercules in response, and it's a 1/1, and then he could dismember it if he wants and make him have to cast this stuff over again. I mean, I don't really think it matters. You probably just steal sabotage it.
It's a pretty good analysis from Cavern Lackey in the chat. Game 1 is a lesson in why people play shops. Game 3 here is a lesson in why only some people play shops.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was hooked on it at first. I was practicing it for this week and for this trimester, I guess you call it. And
Sure.
I had too many games where I just had nothing going on. And I was like, do I really want to be at the mercy of the top of my deck? And just like, there's nothing Chris could do here. Like he was just hoping he draws something well. And if not, he just sits here.
Yeah.
And that's really frustrating.
Yeah, it's one of the few decks in Vintage that basically doesn't draw extra cards.
Right. Yeah. There's Staff of Nin. You could play Staff of Nin. Bob has a Staff.
Sure.
It does cost 6, but with Workshop, it's a lot cheaper. But it's one of the reasons Staff of Nin is great.
So Chris leads with the Metamorph here. I think he's trying to clear a path for Darksteel. What's he copying, though?
I mean, he could copy a Trinket Mage. He could copy it just to have a creature. He could copy a top.
Well, we'll never find out. Steel Sabotage. Yeah. Which does clear a path for the Juggernaut, though. Obviously, Eric was okay with that, given that he had both a Dismember and also a Hercules in his hand.
Well, it's going to be 5/5, so Dismember won't kill it.
Sure. Yeah, I guess that's true. Is Darksteel Juggernaut actually good here?
He can always Hercules it if he wants. Like Hercules his entire board.
Dismember does 5, right?
Oh, I was thinking Dismember was -4/-4.
Yeah, no, it's 5.
Which is weird because I know it's 5 when I play it. I don't know why I was saying 4, but yeah, so it does kill it. So he just dismembers it. Sorry about that. Yeah, I see Rich in the chat and Poke MTG. They're like, hey, it kills it. I was for some reason thinking it was -4/-4.
No worries.
So now Eric's got plenty of mana. Jace going, a threat to actually start attacking Chris. So now an interesting thing, if Eric could find an Energy Flux to go along with Back to Basics, then Chris will have to start paying with his lands. He's got Ancient Tombs he doesn't want to use. That'll lock it up. But I mean, the game's already over, but that could end it a lot faster.
You drop Back to Basics here now, though, right? You finally caught him with a couple lands tapped.
I think you should. I mean, you've got no reason. What else are you going to do with all that mana?
I don't know.
It's not like there's any reason to hold it unless you want to have a card to pitch to Force of Will, but he's already played 3.
Yeah, represent Force of Will, maybe. Doesn't seem that valuable. Yeah, I would definitely. If you drop Back to Basics here, then the question is, well, I guess, do you want to play a second Trinket Mage is maybe the other question. There's nothing left to get, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could get a 0 to play when you do ultimately Hercules him. Because, a Hercules is going to come eventually. Maybe it won't.
I mean, it's not required to win this game.
Yeah, there's no reason to Hercules at any point. I mean, And there's not like Chris is going to be able to save up threats and drop like 5 at once, where he's going to want to. Hercules is best to break out of sort of a lock system when they have like a bunch of spheres out and you need to bust out of it to untap and do something. But at this point, we're not going to get in that spot. Chris is not going to draw 4 threats and get them all out. So I don't think that Hercules is going to really get any use. Or then maybe a blue card to force wheeler getting shuffled back in along with that Mox to that Jace.
It's funny. Trinket Mage gets a Mox, which Eric can't cast, but it is a card to put back with Jace.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's going to shuffle back in.
Funny. So Eric Froehlich is going to go to 4-1 here.
The bottom of Chris's deck must be all threats and man lands. 8 man lands, lodestone golems, just all chilling. I mean, he finally draws a Mutavault when there's a back to basics out, and he's got 2 blockers to protect Jace.
Yeah, it's going through the motions at this point.
Spell Snare. Yeah.
Chris really getting punished, I think, for not changing decks.
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty sure. It's kind of weird. It's like you wonder if something's going to change. We're like, the guy 3-0'd. Why would he change if it ain't broke, don't fix it? But this is a reason why, right. Because then your opponents are going to prepare for you. I mean, even Stephen Meninian was talking with me. He's like, well, I'm playing Chris, and I know he's playing Shops, and I want to make sure I beat that matchup.
Right.
Efro knew he was playing Chris. I mean, everybody knows. So that's a good reason to say, you know what, even though I 3-0'd, it's time to switch decks because people know what I'm up to.
Yeah. I guess who else stayed? Is Rich Shea the only other one who's stuck to his guns?
I think those are the only 2.
Yeah, Menendez. All right, so Chris is done. Energy Flux, good enough. Eric wins 4-1. Chris falls to 3-2.
Who's Chris's next opponent?
I don't know. I don't have that handy.
I wonder if they're prepared for the Shops matchup because it's very likely by not switching, he could go 3-0 to 0-3 just from people being prepared against his deck list, which is pretty unfortunate for him.
Yeah, totally could. His next opponent is Rich Shea, who, yeah, I'm sure is prepared for that matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Rich.
I don't want to switch. But I'm sure Chris expected Rich to stick with Control Slaver.
It's pretty interesting is that it's kind of like what I talked about. We had 2 games where whoever won the coin flip got to just play the non-interactive game. And I said the 3rd game, hopefully we get an interactive game. They both mulligan, didn't really do much. It was interactive, but that bodes well for Eric. I mean, if the Shops opponent is interacting, your Shops deck's not doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. All right, well, we certainly enjoyed getting you in the booth. I'm glad we finally got the chance.
Yeah, man. I hope I'll do some more matches either next few weeks. Hopefully, if the people liked it.
Yeah, sounds great.
We get a cameo here from the champ. Look at that smile. I said there's
there you go.
So he has a beautiful smile. So he wins, and we knew he'd be smiling.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll take a super quick break. We'll cycle Dave out, let him get ready for his match, and we'll bring Chris in to comment the match between LSV and Raptor. So stay tuned.